All praise, all glory, all honors most certainly due to the Most High, the God of the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. With peace to you in the name of Jesus. This is your brother Elisha Israel of the household of faith, and I count it truly a blessing each and every time that I can come before you to preach the word of God, and never do I count it as a light thing to do so. All right, brothers and sisters, I want to get right into today's lesson, and the title is "The Sins of a Nation Invoked God's Judgment." Again, the sins of a nation invoke God's judgment. It is foolish or even asinine to think that you can continually sin and not basically deal with the wrath of God for that sin. That's on an individual level, and it's also on a national level and amongst people. And so I want to show you that in the scriptures and tell you why that's important. When you look at even the country in which you live in, I'm here to tell you America's finished. Because why? Because of sin. See, the precedent has been set. So we want to look at the scriptures in regard to this. This is Genesis 15. Genesis 15. And we're going to pick it up at verse 13. Genesis 15 and verse 13. Now this is concerning Abraham, the father of faith, the patriarch. He is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He was the one that was promised seed, and that his seed would be vast, right? So it says something though. He has this vision, and it says, it's revealed to him, and this is Genesis 15 and verse 13, and it says, and he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and they shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. So it was revealed to him that his seed will be in bondage and afflicted for 400 years, and that took place when Israel was in Egypt, right? They initially went in the days of Joseph. They dwelt in the land of Goshen. Then that Pharaoh rose up that didn't know Joseph. Then you had persecution, you had slavery, you had captivity, you had genocide. All these things took place, but it was told long before, right? They were a nation. What was to take place? But listen to this. In verse 14, it says, and also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. See, that's one thing about God. He will judge you for sin, even nations. See, the sins of a nation invoke God's judgment, invoke his wrath. So he says, I'm a judge, and afterwards shall they come out with great substance. And they spoiled the Egyptians on their way out of that land. That land was devastated by the plagues of God. The power of God was shown and revealed through not just to Egypt, but through everyone around them, to the world. Then it says, and he says, and thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, thou shalt be buried in a good old age. So he's saying you're going to die, you're not going to see any of this, but this is what's going to happen to your seed. But then he says something. He says in verse 16, but in the fourth generation, they shall come thither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. So you had all this time until when? Until the iniquity was full for the Amorites. Now let's go to Deuteronomy 7. Now here's we're talking hundreds and hundreds of years. This is prophesied. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of years later. This is Deuteronomy 7. And let's read this here. This is Deuteronomy 7, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. Deuteronomy 7 and verse 1. Now here Israel has come out of the land, of Egypt. They are in the wilderness. And listen to what it said. It is written, when the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it. Right? That promised land of Canaan. It says, and hath cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. He says, and when the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, the Lord's going to deliver them before you. Why? Because that's judgment. That's judgment. These nations, I said they were stronger than you. You ever think about how is it that a Rome could fall? Rome fell first things internally, right? But then they had these Germanic tribes that were rising up everywhere. They couldn't deal with all kinds of things were going on. You ever think about how is it that a Babylon could fall? How is it that a Greece could fall? Brothers and sisters, you should ask yourself that question when it comes to America. You think America, this superpower, as if it can't fall when every other mighty nation in history has failed. It has fallen. So it says you should consider this when you look around and you see what's happening. So it says, and when the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. See, that's what he said concerning these people. So let's go to that's just an example. Let's go to Jonah. Let's go to read the prophet Jonah. This is Jonah, the first chapter. We're gonna pick it up in verse 1 and see again, judgment comes for sin. This is Jonah 1 and verse 1. It reads, now the word of the Lord came unto Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, arise, go to Nineveh, that great city. Now it's a great city, right? But then it says, and cry against it. See, that's the prophets had a tough job. They would come bringing the message of God. Like the one said with Samuel, do you come in peace? Because oftentimes, that was in the same time as the mercy of God, but he's telling the prophets a lot of times telling you what thus said the Lord and how you in error and what's going to happen if you don't fix it. So it says, arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it. Why? It says, for their wickedness is come up before me. Their wickedness is come up before me. Hold your finger right here. Let's go back to Genesis. Genesis, the 18th chapter. Genesis, the 18th chapter. And we want to pick it up at Genesis, the 18th chapter and verse, let's pick it up. 18 and verse 20. Just to show you, this is how God operates. Now we back many years prior, right? And let's see what happened in the days of Abraham. In Genesis 18 and 20, it says, and the Lord said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me, and if not, I will know. And we know the story. The angels went there. They were with Lot, and then the men came knocking on the door. They came knocking. So they wanted to lay with the men who came in unto them, showing you the wickedness of the place. And what did the Lord do? He rained down fire and brimstone on Sodom and Gomorrah. Again, he brought forth judgment. He is a just God. You cannot continually sin and think that judgment is not coming. So back in Jonah. So again, in Jonah 1 and 2, it says, arise, go to Nineveh. So he sends Jonah to Nineveh. He says, that great city, and cry against that mighty city. He said, cry against it, for their wickedness has come up before me. Now let's go to Jonah, the 3rd chapter, right into Jonah 3, and we'll pick it up right at verse 1. Because he brought the word to them, and it says, and the word of the Lord came unto Jonah the 2nd time, saying, arise. He didn't want to go at first, because all that they had done. But nevertheless, he went and said, right, he told him to rise, go. That's after he was in the belly of the whale. He says, arise, go unto Nineveh, like I told you, that great city, and preach unto it the preaching that I bid thee. So Jonah arose and went unto Nineveh according to the word of the Lord. Now Nineveh was an exceeding great city of 3 days' journey. And it says something here. It says, and Jonah began to enter into the city a day's journey, and he cried and said, yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. So now they had a chance. They had 40 days. It said, hey, listen, in 40 days, this city is going to be destroyed. And the people, it says, so the people of Nineveh believed God and proclaimed the fast and put on sackcloth from the greatest of them even to the least of them. Okay? For word came unto the king of Nineveh, and he rose from his throne, and he laid his robe from him and covered him with sackcloth and sat in ashes. So that just delayed destruction for a time. Let's go to the book of Nahum. Let's go to the book of Nahum. We're in Nahum. This book is right after the book of Micah. This is Nahum. We're going to pick it up at chapter 1 and verse 8. Chapter 1 and verse 8. It says, and this is prophesied, it says, but with an overrunning flood, he will make an utter end of the place thereof. And darkness shall, well, let me pick it up at verse 1. It said, a burden of Nineveh, the book of the vision of Nahum, the Elkoshite. It says, God is jealous and the Lord revengeth. The Lord revengeth and is furious. The Lord will take vengeance on his adversaries, and he reserveth the wrath for his enemies. Okay, concerning this place of verse 8, he says, but with an overrunning flood, he will make another end of the place thereof, and darkness shall pursue his enemies. What do you imagine against the Lord? He will make an utter end. Affliction shall not rise up the second time. Brothers and sisters, what happened to Nineveh? Nineveh was destroyed in 612. This is Nahum chapter 3 and verse 7. It says, and it shall come to pass that all that look upon thee shall flee from thee and say, Nineveh is laid waste, who will bemoan her? When shall I see comforters for her? It's going to be destroyed. And Nineveh, again, was destroyed totally around that time, around 612 BC. But let's go to Psalms, because it's something, quite frankly, that the wicked don't understand. They don't understand this judgment, because if you really understood, just like individuals don't really understand. But if these nations really understood, they'd get their act together. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen. This is Psalms, the 9th chapter. Psalms, the 9th chapter. See, when you look at what's going on in the moral decay in this country, what judgment could come? What else but wrath and devastation could come? Look at what's happening. Look at what the country is doing. This is Psalms 9, and we're going to pick it up at verse 16. I'm not going to keep you long at all. Psalms 9 at verse 16. It says, the Lord is known by the judgment which he executed, the wicked ensnared in the work of his own hands. Then he says something. The wicked shall be turned into hell. And who is this? He said, and all the nations that forget God. See, nobody wants to hear this. That's all right. You're going to understand the wrath of God in a little while. That's what you're going to understand. In a little while, you're going to understand the wrath of God. I'm talking about right here. Right here. It says, the wicked shall be turned into hell. So hell's going to be your portion. That's just the eternal fire, but just devastation, destruction, pain, and anguish. It says, in all the nations, it said the wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forget God. You have to ask yourself the question, does this nation know God? They claim to know God, but even they stopped even doing that. They don't know God. They casting out God. Even the God they made up in their vain imagination, they getting rid of him. They falling further and further away. Let's go to Psalms, the 10th chapter. Psalms, the 10th division. Because here the psalmist writes something pertaining to the mindset of this man. It said, wherefore doth the wicked contemn God? Meaning, it said, wherefore, why doth the wicked despise God? He has said in his heart, thou wilt not require it. Meaning, you're not going to punish me for what I'm doing. You are sadly mistaken. You cannot continue, again, you cannot continue to sin and expect not to have some judgment. That doesn't make any sense. And that's, you see over and over again, that judgment comes. Judgment comes. Ecclesiastes, Ecclesiastes, this the 9th chapter. Ecclesiastes, the 8th chapter, excuse me. Ecclesiastes 8 and 11. See, this is the mindset of the wicked. It says in Ecclesiastes 8 and 11, it says, because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily. Therefore, the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. See, just because you didn't fall or weren't destroyed when you started committing a sin. I mean, as a nation, you think you can just continue to do it. You look at this country. I want you to estimate, tell me how many, just for example, abortion. How many babies have been aborted in this country since 1973, Roe v. Wade? You have any idea? Let me tell you. 59.8 million. 59.8 million children killed, murdered. 59.8 million. And a few thousand because of rape, by the way. 59.8 million. You look at the foundation of the country, it was the economy was based on the genocide of indigenous people, even the exploitation of the Europeans that were brought here as indentured servitude, and then what? The man stealing in the slavery of Israel that went on for 246 years. Then 100 years of Jim Crow. Then some more slavery with convict leasing and mass incarceration. A country in which racism is interwoven into the very fabric. Racism and violence is American as apple pie. Look at all the unjust wars that have been committed. Now you have a situation with sexual decadence and debauchery and licentiousness is the norm. You look, same-sex marriage is legal. You got Satanists putting monuments in parks. And then you got false worship running rampant. Materialism, right? The exploitation and oppression of the poor. All these things, this understand. You cannot continue in this type of behavior and not expect so. So then when something happens, you want to say, oh, you want to turn to God. God bless. Listen, you're not paying attention. You're not paying attention to what's going on. It's something going on everywhere around this country. You better pay attention. Because at a certain time, judgment has to come. That's the precedent that's already set. Let's go to Isaiah the 5th chapter. Let's see what the wicked do. Isaiah the 5th chapter. Isaiah 5. Pick it up at Isaiah 5 and verse 20. Isaiah 5 and verse 20. What do the wicked do? Isaiah 5 and verse 20. It reads, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Now think about what I was talking about earlier. So many people talking about this is what they think is good. Safe sex is good in America. Wrap it up, right? Safe sex, not keeping yourself until marriage. That's unrealistic. That's you being unrealistic. It's good to wrap it up. It's good for a woman to have a right to privacy, as if you could murder somebody in your own home, in your own private home. That's not what that's not a good explanation for or justification for abortion, but that's what's put forth. This is my body. I can do what I want to. You can't kill nobody in your body, though, right? Out of convenience. You know how wicked that is? Look at all the murder that goes on. This is a wicked place. But then you say certain things are good when they're not. Like same-sex marriage. You say like what I'm saying right now, that's not politically correct. Could care less, but that's not politically correct. To say that same-sex marriage is an abomination before God. Homosexuality. He tells you that clearly. But if you say that, you're wrong. Right? Look at how that's being framed even in the media. Look at every television show you watch right now. You see that narrative. Practically everyone, you see that narrative. It's wholesale. It's wholesale. And it is the sign of a morally decadent society that is crumbling. That is crumbling. Falling, waning empires build walls. They build walls. And they engage in even all the sexual debauchery and moral decadence that you see. Those are the things you saw in Rome that was crumbling. You see that here. But what do they call it? They call it good. See, it's good. Take those 10 commandments. At least they would have the 10 commandments. Granted, the justice system is inherently racist in America, but oftentimes you would at least see the 10 commandments at some of these courthouses. You know, they would kind of fake it. You know, one time they put their hand on the Bible, right? Now, hey, get that out of here. Get those 10 commandments out of here. That's bad. Get God, even though they didn't have the right concept of God. God was in the school. They used to pray in the schools. They used to teach a form of creationism. I'm not saying that form was correct, but now you in a school? No, let's teach the babies about having the child that has 2 daddies. Let's indoctrinate them with homosexual propaganda. That's what's taking place right now in the schools. I'm talking about babies. Indoctrinating them concerning sexuality at 5 years old. In some states, that is law. Yeah, so they're calling, like he says. He said, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil. See, it's good to make sure that you can allow a man to go in a woman's bathroom. See, that's good today. That's totally backwards. You see that? It's good. It's good. I read on here, not kids, but grown people in colleges, college campuses, and universities being reprimanded for their religious faith unjustly. Right? Now, I'm not saying they're totally correct, but at least they had some saying they believe in a God. They say, "Would you believe in a God in academia? How dare you?" Not realizing that when you say atheism, you automatically are dealing with an amoral ideology or belief system, because you can have no morality without God. You can have no morality without God. Let's go to Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter, because even Israel as a nation. See, it was a point in time when judgment was brought upon the nation of Israel. Let's go to Deuteronomy 4. We're going to pick it up at verse 26. Deuteronomy 4 and verse 26. Now here, Moses prophesies of what's to happen to the children of Israel even before they go into that promised land. This is the seed of Abraham. But Moses tells them, he said, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day that ye shall soon utterly perish from out the land whereunto ye go over Jordan to possess it. Ye shall not prolong your days upon it, but shall utterly be destroyed. You're finished. You go into captivity. You're going to be scattered. He said, and the Lord shall scatter you among the nations, and ye shall be left few in number among the heathen, among these people that don't know God. That's what we are right now. It says, whither the Lord shall lead you, and there you shall serve gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. That's what's going to happen. You're going to worship these false gods, and that's where we are right now. We worshiping the God. This is irony, brothers and sisters. The people of God, the true Israelites, have lost their identity. Some other people are claiming to be Israel, right? And the true Israelites are on the bottom and serving falsely the gods that have been concocted through Christendom out of the European mind. This is the arrogancy. Now I got to talk about this. This is the arrogancy of Europeans. You can take it or leave it, but this is true. First of all, no major religion was founded upon the continent of Europe. None. Secondly, they are so arrogant that they would actually take what was a faith system and twist it and adulterate it and concoct it, and then make the people of the book look like them and feed you that poison. But how do we put ourselves in that position to be destroyed as a people when we sin against God? See, these people are not greater than us. We've been lied to so long. We think that even in our subconscious, deep down in our inner being and inner core, we believe that we are inferior to these people. A lot of us say, I don't believe that. But yes, you do, because your actions show that. Don't you know, brothers and sisters, that all we have to do as a people is turn back to God? That's all we have to do. If we turn back to God in sincerity and truth, if we acknowledge our sin, turn back to him, as a nation, nobody can defeat us. Nobody. I don't care what weapons they have. I don't care what scientific advancements they have or stole. I don't care what it is. We can't be defeated. Why? Because God will be fighting our battles. He will be behind us. That's that. You can't defeat God. But we want to put our trust in the vote. We want to put our trust in some miseducation. We want to put our trust in some fiat currency. I'm going to tell you today, none of that ultimately matters. What matters is turning back to God. But he says, you're going to be cast into slavery. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28th chapter. Deuteronomy 28 and verse 68. Because here he tells you another thing about what's going to happen. It says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. So you're going into the house of bondage. Remember I talked about Israel going into bondage for 400 years in Egypt. He says Egypt because Egypt, you read it even in Exodus 20, is described as the house of bondage. Captivity, that was Israel's first captivity. So he said, you're going back into captivity. It's synonymous with captivity, Egypt was. He says, again with ships, but you're going by way of slave ships. Now think about when he said this. This is before Israel even goes into the land. Hundreds and hundreds of years later, even after Israel, you got Babylonian captivity, Assyrian captivity. You got the siege in 70 AD by the Romans. Then you got the transatlantic slave trade. That what happened, Israel went into slavery by way of slave ships. But that was the what? The judgment of God. Why? Because of sin. The sins of a nation invoke God's judgment. If we would only understand that. If we would only understand that. You can't keep calling on God and not doing anything that he says. Jeremiah. Just let me finish at 68. But it says, the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. You're going to be sold as slaves, and nobody's going to redeem you. Let's go to Jeremiah, the 7th chapter. Jeremiah, the 7th chapter. You can't keep calling on God and not doing anything he says. Who lied to you? That no good hypocrite preacher? Somebody lied to you. You better repent. This is Jeremiah, the 7th chapter, verse 1. It says, the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, stand in the gate of the Lord's house and proclaim there this word and say, hear the word of the Lord, all ye of Judah that enter in at these gates to worship the Lord. Thus said the Lord. So all you that's coming to worship, hear the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, amend your ways and your doings, and I will cause you to dwell in this place. He said, if only you would repent, if only you would turn back, if only you would stop sinning. That's your problem. That's your problem. But you don't understand what's going on. Even the Messiah, he said, only if you knew the time of your visitation. But they rejected him, and what happened? They were ultimately destroyed a little time after that. I'm telling you, destruction is coming here. But nevertheless, he says in verse 4, trust ye not in lying words, saying the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord are these. See, our people trusting in lying words today through these false ministers that are not informing them of the situation, but they rather want to make merchandise of the people. They want to spoil them. They want to get rich off of them. They want to live great and fine off of them and be served by the people instead of being a servant to the people. And it's the people's fault too, because they have itching ears. They don't want to hear the word of God. Most people don't want to hear what thus saith the Lord, because that comes with responsibility. That comes with you cleaning up your house. That comes with you getting your act together. That comes with you, like what Jeremiah said, amending your ways. He says, trust ye not in lying words, saying the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord are these. For if ye thoroughly amend your ways and your doings, if ye thoroughly execute judgment between a man and his neighbor, if you oppress not the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, and shed not innocent blood in this place, neither walk after other gods to hurt, then will I cause you to dwell in this place, in the land that I gave to your fathers, forever and ever. He said, behold, you trust in lying words that cannot profit. He asked a question. He said, will ye still murder, commit adultery, swear falsely, and burn incense unto Baal, and walk after other gods whom you know not? So you're going to do all this sin? You look at us today, even our people today. All the false worship we dealing in, all the murder in our communities, all the abandonment of our children, all the children out of wedlock, all the destructive, sinful behavior that we are engaged in. But we got a church, 3-4 churches on every block. He said, will you commit all this sin? And in verse 10 it says, and come and stand before me in this house, which is called by my name, and say we are delivered to do all these abominations, you hypocrite? Will you do that? But that's what people are doing. That's what people are doing. And you should understand, judgment is coming. Judgment is coming. You had Eve and Israel, they were sacrificing their kids unto Molech. I was talking about abortions earlier. We have, as a people, roughly 17.9 abortions since Roe v. Wade, at least. So they ain't sacrificing them to Molech, but they're sacrificing them unto the God of convenience. Because a baby is inconvenient. So you kill them. We've killed over 25% of our population. It's 38 million or so black folks in this country, almost 39 million. But you got 17.9 million abortions amongst just our people since Roe v. Wade. That's wickedness, brothers and sisters. That's wickedness. But you want to call on God? You worshiping falsely, but you want to call on God? You took all the false ways and customs of these heathen. These people don't know God. You go into a church not realizing that you inherited a false system of worship from a slave master. There's one Lord, one faith, one baptism. He gave his law, statutes, and commandments to Israel. He gave us a way of life. He didn't give us to be an Episcopalian, a Methodist, a Baptist. Let's go to Isaiah the 13th chapter, because I'm going to end it here. Isaiah 13, because ultimately, brothers and sisters, judgment is going to come upon all nations. And we're going to see why. You should already know. What's the title? The sins of a nation invoke God's judgment. This is Isaiah, last place, Isaiah 13 and verse 9. It says, behold, the day of the Lord cometh, cruel, both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. So how do we know we're talking about in the future? Which is fast approaching. It said, for the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in its going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. This is the sign, even in Matthew 24 and in Joel. This is the sign that you see indicating the second coming of the Messiah shall take place under the sixth seal, John the Revelator tells you. And he says something here, Isaiah, that mighty prophet says, and I will punish the world for their evil and the wicked for their iniquity. Why is the world being punished? Because God is a righteous judge. Hold your finger here. I said it's going to be the last place. We're going to hold our finger here to put this in perspective. Let's go to real quick Genesis. Genesis, the 6th chapter. We're going to go right back to Isaiah. Just a little bit more. You ain't got nowhere to go. Genesis, the 6th chapter. And we're going to pick it up at verse. Pick it up at verse 5. Genesis 6 and verse 5. It says, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth. So now this is all the way back here in the days of Noah. This is Genesis 6. We just into the book and into the Bereshit at the beginning. And it says, and God saw, in verse 5, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. So what did he do? And the Lord said, I will destroy man. That's it. I'll destroy him. Why? Because of sin. It said the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast and the creeping thing and the fowls of the air. For it repented me that I have made them. It says, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah was obedient. That's how he found that. So in Isaiah 13, so he flooded the whole world, killed everybody except for Noah and his family. And it tells you in another place that he built that ark. He and his family got in that ark, and the Lord shut him in that ark. So they might have been knocking, trying to bang on that ark. The Lord shut him in. This Isaiah 13 and verse 11, it says, I will punish the world for their evil and the wicked for their iniquity, just like he did back then. Just like he did in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah, when he rained down fire and brimstone. That's what he's going to do this time. He's not going to flood the earth again. He's going to rain down fire this time. See, he brings forth judgment for sin in your individual life and as well as a nation. You are the diaspora, are a prime example of God's imminent judgment upon a people. You are a living example of that. It says, and I will punish the world for their evil and the wicked for their iniquity, and I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. And I will make a man more precious than fine gold, even the man than the golden wedge of Ophir. Therefore I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place in the wrath of the Lord of hosts, and in the day of his fierce anger. That's the judgment, brothers and sisters. The sins of a nation invoke God's judgment, and understand when it's all said and done, it's going to be, the whole world's going to be judged. I thank you for your time.